everybody. We're at the Imp and the Ogre. My name is Paul.
This is Ryan.
Today we're talking about Keep on the Shadowfell.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, so let's see. Keep on the Shadowfell. This is a 4th edition book. So it was originally came out in 2008. And had designers on it were Mike Merles, who you may have heard of before, and Bruce Cordell. Where would you find it these days? It is free, which is always good. So you can actually find it on the Wizards website itself if you search for it, and it's on the DMs Guild, as with most of these older D&D adventures these days.
Mm-hmm. Free's good. I like free.
Free is the best price point,
yeah,
for sure, and you do get a lot of bang for your buck. It's a pretty great little adventure, and it comes with all of the information you need to get started playing 4th edition. So if you've ever been interested in playing 4th edition, or you want to find out why people say it's terrible, and is it actually as terrible as it is? It isn't. It's pretty great. You can check it out. So there's the quick start rules and a bunch of information in there, and even if you don't like the adventure and you don't care about 4th edition, it comes with a ton of printable maps.
Mm-hmm, it does.
A ton of printable maps. So if you're looking for maps, definitely just check it out, because it's worth the download just for that.
Yeah, quick overview, I guess, is standard adventure, a bunch of dungeon crawling. Your mission is to stop a ritual that spellcaster is using to open a gate into the Shadowfell.
Yep, there's a keep. It's not actually on the Shadowfell, but there's a gate being opened up. It's pretty standard D&D trope stuff. You got to stop this cult. There's lots of places to check out. It's pretty good. It's a little combat heavy, but if your party is into that, it runs pretty well. They're well designed and what have you. So your general impressions of it, sir. Actually, here, let's start with this. This probably was like your first experience looking at 4th edition. I don't know if you had more experience with it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there's systems that I like in it, like the minion system, I think, is great.
What is the minion system? For
well,
those who
just
don't know?
having any NPC that has 1 hit point. Their other statistics are the same, but they've got 1 hit point. So if they're hit, they're dead, essentially.
But they're still deadly.
Yeah, they're still deadly, but it makes just combat bigger, more exciting. If you know about action economy, it makes, weighs things, the scales are a little more even. Because I think this adventure is meant to be run for like 6 adventures-ish. What does it say?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was around 6, yeah. So if you get to that point, if you're fighting anything that's like, an encounter of 4 NPCs is not enough, right? So all the encounters in the adventure have a lot of non-player characters. The combat could be deadly in a lot of cases if rolls don't go well. Obviously, things get swung after the first round or two quite a bit in favor of the heroes, I guess. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's good.
Yeah, well, I mean, the mini system is pretty... The minion system is pretty fun, and I really wish they'd kept that for 5th edition. I mean, just for things like flanking buddies, not that flanking is an optional role, I guess, in 5th edition, but the threats of it also makes AOE feel so much more satisfying
when you kill a ton of stuff.
Because you kill a ton of stuff, right? I mean, dropping a fireball into a group of enemies and they're just like, oh, okay, and they keep coming. Yeah, it's less exciting. It definitely makes it more fun, and honestly, a big part of why I like 4th edition is I like wargaming games.
Yeah.
I like Warhammer. I like 40K. I like that type of stuff. And to me, 4th edition will always just be an excellent mini skirmish game. Like it is so nicely designed for that is probably one of the biggest complaints people had with it, is that combat takes forever because you have so many options and all of that fun stuff. It shouldn't take forever if your players are prepared for what they're supposed to be doing on your turn. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that is a lot to ask from your players sometimes. Mm-hmm. But it's super fun. And to be honest, if your players in your standard D&D game are more about the combat than everything else, I couldn't recommend 4th edition more, because it's so finely tuned for the combat. All the classes are really satisfying. Everybody gets to do really cool things.
Yeah.
So it's super fun. Also, if you were ever thinking about playing like a solo game, you only had one person to play for, it totally could be run as like a squad minigame. Like it's one where like you could just play it as the whole party.
Yeah.
Because it does benefit from that type of synergy between the abilities.
Yep.
So like one of my favorite games ever is Final Fantasy Tactics. It's an old PlayStation 1 game. If you've never played it, you're missing out. It's super fun. And 4th edition has always, to me, felt like that. You got the grid-based movement, you got cool abilities, you got squad control, you're controlling a whole squad. It's just, I like it. It's fun. And it's not actually a super hard conversion. There is a Wizards conversion document out there. Just Google it. You can find it. So converting to 5th edition isn't super difficult. Also, imagine if you kind of like boosted your starting level up on your players, you could probably just run it as is. To me, 5th edition seems like it was designed to be played at 3rd level or at least 2nd level by design. Like you fly through the first level. So I imagine if you took a party of 3rd level PCs starting this adventure, you could probably just run it as is. I mean, there's a few other things you need to tweak. 4th edition had higher saves and things like that and different types of armor classes, but it's pretty comparable in some things, and you get tons of cool abilities. Like the monsters are so much more fun in 4th edition, in my personal opinion. Though if you are running this and you do basically play 5th edition, you should be aware that 4th edition has tons of magic items, and 5th edition doesn't have tons of magic items. So if you're playing this, the conversion is going to involve a lot of like, no, you don't get that cool toy. No, you don't get that cool toy. Magic doesn't work like that in 5th edition. Like there's types of tweaks that you'd have to make. Overall, I think it's really fun. I think the fight at the end, which we'll talk about when we get to that point, is super great. Like it's awesome. It's epic. One complaint I have just in general is I think that for this adventure to be successful, you should really have some foreshadowing of the big bad evil guy. Right?
It does say that in the actual adventure at some point. That's like you need to give flavor to the dungeons, or this is just a dungeon crawl. Yeah. So that's, just DM narrative, and you got to add flavor effectively.
Yeah, and I mean, like tying into what I was just saying, like you could actually have some little adventure for your level 1 PCs that involved Calorel, who gets away, and this could be your follow-up from 2nd level. Because once again, I think if you're running it like at 2nd level, the conversion is probably fairly minimal. You need the extra hit points because in 4th edition, you do start with a lot more hit points than you do in 5th edition. But like you could have a mini adventure to begin with that ties into them coming after this guy again, which I think would work a lot better. Because as is, you don't run into him in the adventure at all until you disrupt the ritual at the end, I believe, right? Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
That sounds right, yeah.
So, but other than that, I think it's pretty fun. So let's talk from the start, the hooks.
3 hooks. Yeah. To me, they all were almost like set up for varying levels of player, like personal player, right? Like there was the mentor hook, right? Where you could say, if you were new D&D players, you had a pre-existing reason to be there, right? Someone that you were interested in has gone missing in the place that you need to go to. So you're incentivizing your players to go anyway to look after the person. Next one was someone wants you to go map the ruins of the place. So that's, you're giving a choice to your players. They could go and do it. Experienced players are going to go do it anyway. And then there was the ominous signs hook, which is basically everything is laid out in front of you. This is why you have to go to this place. I know that this person is there trying to open the rift to the Shadowfell. Please go stop them.
Yeah. No, I have the exact same thing. It's a level of directness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like if they don't know what you're going to do, maybe give them the ruin mapping. If they still don't want to go there, plop an NPC in front of their face that's like, please go do this. This is why we're here sitting at the table playing D&D.
Yeah, no, it's direct versus sort of the indirect plot hooks. It's like, and obviously you could probably give like multiple plot hooks to different players. But yeah, if you have more inquisitive, more experienced players, you can definitely do the missing mentor thing.
Yeah, or just like, we got to go there for some reason. Like this is a reason to go there.
Well, because with the missing mentor, you're like, the missing mentor actually, there's no guarantee you even stumble onto the actual adventure. If you're doing the hook where you have to investigate the castle, like you can't miss it. Like literally, it's just full of danger.
Yeah,
and it keeps going down, and at the bottom is the boss, right?
The only way you could miss it is if you don't talk to the spellcaster in town again that has the information for you.
Yeah,
Like,
which is a separate issue. I don't know why he's withholding the information for no reason.
He doesn't trust you yet.
And he trusts you afterwards for like literally no reason.
You did something good.
Anyway. Agree to disagree on that one.
The hooks are all fine. They're good hooks.
Well, they're all reasons to get towards the place. And then there's like another hook built into it, right? Because on your way to the town, you get...
Ambushed.
Good old ambush. Can't go wrong with it. You know, was it Lost Mines of Phandelver uses the ambush hook.
Everything that uses the ambush
It's
hook.
a classic for a reason, right? Yeah. So you get ambushed by kobolds on the way to town.
Yeah.
Right? It's nothing in particular. You should easily, well, not easily, it's a reasonably challenging encounter, but it does lead to a side quest for those that are willing to follow up on it.
Yeah, to help the town, to go to the kobold lair.
Yeah. Now, I will say, in reading this first encounter, it did remind me of one of the things I don't like about 4th edition is that reading a 4th edition encounter is kind of painful. As a DM standpoint, I like being able to sort of read through an adventure just for fun. And with the way a 4th edition encounter is laid out, it's very... by itself, and it's very detached, and it's really great. But I think a 4th edition adventure would read so much better if you just took all the specific encounter details and put them in appendix.
Yeah,
and then you can just read through, like, you get ambushed by kobolds, see this page, and then continue on, just from like readability.
That's like, I find almost all adventures are like that. They're just hard to read through because they're broken up in so many things. Like reading the old edition stuff, reading through them, I find is even more difficult finding the information that is like useful, because there's like, go to the keep, and then there's 4 pages of every single room in the keep, and then a small paragraph on like, this is what they're supposed to be doing here. Like it's a needle in a haystack to actually figure out what you're supposed to do in the adventures.
Sometimes, yeah. So that's a pro tip for those of you who want to write adventures, you know, from a DM standpoint.
One thing I liked about the Kobold Lair encounter, that if you go do, that is sort of on a timer, that the minions are on waves.
Yeah. We'll get. I think we're getting a little heavy, but yes, the waves and the timer stuff that's built into this adventure a fair bit. That's pretty cool. So before we get to the side quest, which is a substantial side quest, we get to town. Yeah, and the town is Winter Haven. Yeah. So what did you think? I mean, you've read a few adventures at this point. Yeah, it is all right. The Barwin's Grand Shop, I thought, was the most interesting place in town, where there's like, you know, the retired whoever that's set up shop in town for whatever reason, that has stuff from all around the world, because you're supposed to be, it's a secluded area that like specifically the people that grew up here, they don't go anywhere else. They don't have word from anywhere else unless there's caravans coming through or traders coming through. Yeah. So I guess if you're looking for interesting things, and you could do it at this shop. I found it annoying that there was specific responses to every NPC had. So it says, if you ask question A, this is what the blacksmith will say, this is what the innkeeper will say, instead of just providing you with what they know and allowing you to tailor the responses to that. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But I also think that it is more beginner friendly. It is, yeah. To have that, right? Like, it's for you or I and other experienced DMs, like, the information to be able to do it. But like, for somebody that's DMing something for the first time, and you got to take into account this book was designed to be like, hey, here's 4th edition, learn how to play D&D. Yeah. If you're a brand new player, it removes some of that difficulty, right? It gives you a canned response, which is easier to, it's like young into. Person friendly. It's which is, you know, we kind of need young people in the hobby. Yeah. So, you know, get them hooked early. Like any good drug, you got to get them young, right? So, but no, as it comes down to it, is if you're giving something to a younger person, making it easier for them to run and have fun with it, is you do want to remove as many barriers as possible. So I totally agree that, like, I would never use the canned response. It's also like, I don't generally use room descriptions, but I understand why they're there, because it makes it easier for new DMs to run it. There's fewer barriers and less prep work.
And the ambiance is important too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to forget sometimes to describe the smell or the sound. So room descriptions are all right. I think reading what they have to say on a specific question is good. It might give you an idea of how they would respond, or you can write notes on what they know and then just respond however you would. I mean, that's how I would do it. It's like, this is the information that they know. This is what they're willing to give you. Because I mean, I don't know, why would they just offer up that information anyway? Is like one of the things I ask myself, right? Like, your whole party could just be drunk and mean, right? Like, but they ask the right question and they get that information.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's based off your own style and what have you. But I will say that, like, if nothing else, reading the canned response gives you an idea about the personality or the intended personality, if you will, of the NPCs, which is not necessarily something that is baked into things. Like, presumably, you add, this person's nice, this person's jerkish, and then you adjust accordingly to how awful your players are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have to get the information at some point anyway. Like, if this is pretty specific, they don't really even need to find out information.
Well, they do actually. I mean, that's one point I wrote down here, is that you do need to follow up on all the hooks, right? Like, regardless of which hook you give them, they need to find out where the keep is. They need to find out if there's any information about their missing mentor, or whatever his name was, or to try to follow up on more about the cult.
I mean, they could really, but you could also use none of the hooks. Like, the keep is not a secret.
No.
Like, everybody in town knows where it is, so you could just have an overarching theme of like which is the thought of the townsfolk, is that, like, we don't go there.
Yeah.
There's bad things there. Yeah. So they could get that from anybody, and whether or not they choose to go and explore, they would find part of the hook later on without actually having the hook. Because, like, really, I mean, why are you here? You're going to go explore that place. There's nothing else nearby.
One would hope.
Yeah.
I've run into plenty of parties that have done their best to not do what they're quote unquote supposed to do.
Just move the dungeon.
Move the dungeon.
Yeah.
Well, there's only so many times you can move the dungeon. That mountain range just keeps shifting around. Your party's effectively in a circle of mountains now in the middle of this village. It's in terms of like depth of starting town. I mean, this is definitely something that you see in the later editions compared to the earlier editions. Less time is used in fleshing out, I think, the towns. Winterhaven's perfectly acceptable, and if this is just a stop on an adventuring path and they don't plan on spending much time in the area, which this is the first in a series of adventures, so I don't know if they're expected to stay in the area. It's not really fleshed out to the point where, like, you probably wouldn't want to use this as like a home base town, you'd have to put some work into it if you were going to build a whole sort of mini campaign around the area. Like, it's not.
It is like they did intentionally build it as a place that's to be like a keep, though. There's like walls around the entire thing.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just talking about the town itself in terms of the.
But I mean, I think they intended for people to use this as a home base.
Oh, I guess I mean, I guess
it says specifically later on, like, if your players intend, they could use this as if they don't shatter their reputation with the townsfolk
by being murder hobos.
Yeah.
It's okay. I do think that some of this stuff requires the players to be proactive, especially the kobold stuff, right? Like, no one approaches them to handle the kobolds. The adventure as written expects them to follow up on it. So that's actually one thing I've noted here, is that what I would do is I'd probably put some like bounty postings. Right? Like, put a bounty on kobold ears.
Yeah.
Right? To incentivize the players to look into that. Because I don't know about you, but like, I find oftentimes with my players is that if you don't spell it out for them sometimes, they don't really go looking.
Am I misremembering? Doesn't the the like mayor offer them money at some point if they choose not to go and do this? Doesn't he offer them gold to go get rid of them?
You have to engage with them,
Yeah.
right? Like the whole point is like you can follow up on it, and there's a reward,
Yeah.
right? Like you go and eliminate the kobolds from the dungeon, like they absolutely reward you for doing that. But once again, like you're just some bunch of randos that showed up into town.
Yeah.
Everyone's not like, save us from the kobolds, right? So the adventure as written expects your players to ask about, we were just ambushed, what's going on? It's like, oh yeah, there's kobolds, I think so and so mentioned something about that. Like you gotta, if you talk to basically any of the NPCs about the kobold ambush, they will point them in the direction of the Lord Mayor or whatever his name was, who, if they talk to, will give them a side quest to look into the kobolds, which they don't.
So basically, it like assumes you're going to play D&D if you're running this adventure.
That's a big assumption sometimes. Like it's a big.
You're not just going to go to the bar and try and gamble and
take over the town, and then
It is true. Most of the time, D&D is just not you playing D&D. It's just doing stuff that you feel like doing.
Yeah. No, it can be difficult.
I mean, I guess if they were having difficulties, like you could. When the players go to leave, the gates could be closed. They could not give them access to the wilds because they're too threatened by the kobolds. Like there's lots of ways you could steer them into doing it. Like if you want to leave because we're not unlocking the gates.
Yeah, the gates close at dusk because of it's too dangerous or whatever. So you can't leave or you can't get back in or something like that. Like you could definitely build it into there. But once again, for an adventure that's designed for new players, you need to have alternative avenues to get to the quest stuff.
Yeah.
And another, on a similar vein, like the Dragon Burial stuff, it's a side quest that only exists if you have that hook to begin with. Mm-hmm. And that hook is the most vague hook. So it's the one you're least likely to use if you are dealing with new.
Yeah.
So some other hook in town, if you want to, it's not mandatory whatsoever. Like there's no real reason that you need to include that at all. But if you wanted it to, you want to use the encounter because it comes with the adventure, you need to have another way for the players to find it. So, just a general suggestion for that is there's that, the wizard in town, what's his name? Valthrun, I wrote it down. Valthrun the Prescient. The sage in town, if you wanted to use the hook and you didn't use you wanted to use the encounter, but you didn't use the hook, I would just have the sage ask you to look about his friend was supposed to be back. Like it's really easy to just put some like, hey, my friend is missing. He was looking in this area. Can you go check it out, right? Like, but as is, there's no in-town hook for that encounter, right? So whether or not you want to use it, man. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about the two optional hooks. And I will say the kobold stuff and the burial site are not integral to the adventure at all.
No.
Right? You don't need to do them. And if you don't do them, there's no real penalty. Right?
Yeah.
There's links, there's hooks in these encounters to the main plot where they tie back into the cultists. But if you cut them completely...
Yeah, you're not missing anything.
You're not missing anything, right? I think they only exist, once again... To give you XP, to give you some items and stuff like that, and to help you find out about the cult. If you're using the hook, where you're like, there's a cult in the area, you need to stop the cult, then you don't need them at all. Yeah. So take it with a grain of salt, right? Like, because you could cut them and not lose anything from the adventure. I think, though, that especially the Kobold Caves is a great encounter. Like, I think you should definitely run that one. The Dragon Burial Site, there's some RP aspects to it, but anyways, let's talk about it. Oh, first things first. And obviously I'm talking over you.
That's okay.
Cut it.
Talk away.
What I really liked is the first time you leave town, you get ambushed again.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that because that never happens, right? You always get an ambush. No one ever expects the second ambush.
The return of the kobolds.
Yeah, and you know that like as soon as you've ambushed your players twice, they're going to be paranoid, about it happening again, right?
Or annoyed. Annoyed.
Well, they'll prepare for it, right?
Yeah.
And it never comes, but but it's like extra incentive, especially if they didn't follow up the first time regarding the kobolds.
Yeah, it'll make them want to do it this time for sure.
Right? I mean,
They're being annoyed by the kobolds just as much as the townsfolk are.
Right. So, I mean, basically, you could just have an ambush by kobolds every single time they came or left the town until they dealt with the kobolds. Which actually is not a bad idea, and I could definitely see there being merit in that, because it continually like irritates your players.
Yeah, like, ugh, we should go deal with this.
And indicates that it's a continued problem,
Yeah.
Which would presumably incentivize them to eventually want to figure it out at some point. Anyways, I just like that. Because it went against my expectations too. Like you wouldn't expect it, and your players probably wouldn't expect it.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the dragon burial site first? Or you want to talk about the kobold lair first?
Kobold lair.
Alrighty.
I like this encounter because of you're like on a timer with it. So once you're found out, there's waves of minions leading up to like the big boss. So other than that, it's pretty standard. It's like a room that you go in like
2 rooms.
Yeah. So it's like you know exactly where it is. You travel there, you sneak in or don't sneak in, and then it's just I just like the combat mechanics of it. You're 3 turns in, the next wave comes, another 3 turns, the next wave comes, and you just got to deal with it. So there's no rest. It's one extended war of attrition. Yeah. So if you plus the minions, if you expend all your resources too early, then you're in trouble for the later bits of the fight. Yeah. I mean, you're expected to win anyway.
Well, it's D&D. You're always expected to win.
Yeah, so...
well, maybe not always, but...
Other than that, yeah, I mean, it's just a fine encounter.
Yeah, no, I agree. I liked that it kind of goes against the standard trope that you do one room and all the no one else pays attention to what happens in the previous room, and then you do the next room and blah blah blah. Like basically, you chain pull the dungeon, and all of the kobolds get you if you're not quick enough or clever enough or quiet enough, right? So I think it's a type of encounter that would reward clever and careful players, right? Because you could totally set up your own ambush, right? And you could pick off kobolds as they come and go, right? Like you could definitely do it, but you are kind of penalized in a good way for just being like, let's go get them.
Yep.
Right? As you should be every single time you just run into a random dungeon. You should chain pull the dungeon and die in most cases, in my personal opinion. That being said, while I did like the encounter, I really disliked the goblin bad boss in it.
Whatever, the fat
goblin Iron Tooth. Okay. And I kind of disliked the plot element of it. So the plot of this part, not that your players would ever find out about it, but for the DMs that read it like me, the point of the kobolds is that Calorel, the evil cult leader, has sent his agent, this goblin, to basically sick the kobolds on anybody in the area so they're not disrupted. Mm-hmm. When nobody cares about the keep in the area anyways.
Yeah.
So let's cause a bunch of attacks in the area, because that definitely won't draw anybody's attention to it. Like it draws the PCs into it. It literally accomplishes the exact opposite of what it sets out to do. Right? Like it's just, I don't think bad guys should be dumb for the sake of being dumb. There could be better reasons for it, but as is, like the actions of the big bad evil guy are actually leading to him getting caught.
Yeah, I mean, they could just be acting on their own. It's just a much more reasonable...
Well, the point is that this is supposed to lead you to it, in which that when you kill the goblin, he yells out, "Calorel and Lord Orcus, prepare my way," and then has a note on him that says, "My spy in Winterhaven suggests we keep an eye out for visitors to the area. It probably does not matter. In just a few more days, I will completely open the rift. Then Winterhaven's people will serve for food for all those Lord Orcus sends to do my bidding." So if they haven't figured out the plot by now...
They will after doing that.
Yeah, so once again, if you're a new DM... sure, if you have fairly obtuse players, sure, but come on, right? Like
It's pretty obvious. Yeah, I mean, it's no different than the one hook that just basically lays out everything.
I know, but like,
for
why?
you.
Why does that need to be in a note? Why do you need that note to be like, "Mwahaha," you know, like
Because notes.
Because notes, and I think I actually wrote in my little notes here that like, why it's such a terrible trope. Like that's how you. It's a bad way to convey information to your players.
Like, you'd think that people would just burn them after reading them.
They should. Why would you have like a pointless note? Now, granted, paper could be, valuable in medieval Europe. It's not in D&D because magic. But why would you have the note? Like, why are you saving that? Right? Like.
Yeah.
And once again, because notes is going to come up again in this adventure, as I'm sure.
Like, finding stuff is fun.
Getting your plot information from notes is kind of kind of ridiculous, to be honest. So honestly, I thought there should be a link, but it should be more subtle.
Yeah.
For sure, right? Like there should be some sort of link. I mean, the goblin itself has like a tattoo of the sigil of Orcus on him, which is fine. Or even just like the note could be a little less ridiculous, or something. Like, I don't know if you have any good suggestions. I just thought like, man, like, can we be a little less on the nose here? Like, it didn't.
Yeah, I would have just left it out probably. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're gonna end up going to that keep anyway at some point.
Well, I mean, all you'd have to do is put like, maybe the goblin has a sword that has like the crest of whatever the name of the keep is. I can't remember the original name of the keep was on it. Like some to suggest that, hey, maybe the goblin came from there. Let's go check it out. And there's like a ton of other goblins there, right? So like, there's a hook in town that talks about goblins in the area of the keep. So like, maybe a little less obvious. Like, I mean, it doesn't get much more obvious.
It's very point you in the right direction.
Well, it's very like, oh no, no, they're going to stop the rift from being open in 3 days and 25 minutes if they don't get to the 3rd floor of the keep before, like it's a very quest arrowy, we need to be there. And even if like the note was something vague, it's just like the work is almost done in 3 more days, so just keep it up for 3 more days and then return. Like something like that suggests that like, okay, something important is coming on. There's more to this than what's actually there versus here's what's happening.
Yeah, that'd be a better idea for sure.
Just something a little bit. I mean, once again, depends on your party, depends on your experience and whatnot, but something a little. I assume most parties we could deal with something a little bit more subtle.
It's a little explicit, yeah.
It's not a little explicit.
It tells you what you're supposed to go and do.
If you didn't tell them originally, it tells them again.
Yeah.
Exactly what they're supposed to do, which is not, in my opinion, shouldn't be that fun.
So a cool encounter, too much information.
Yeah, it's a little too directly linked to the main plot.
That's
so
true.
If your players are aimless, I guess, use it, but otherwise maybe just make it a little bit more subtle. Dragon Burial Site. I don't have much to add to this. I kind of disliked. I mean, the encounter itself is fine. Like it's got some cool mechanics. The whole point of this is you're rescuing your mentor or rescuing this guy if he's not your mentor. He's in a cage. It is an actual Dragon Burial Site, but apparently the only thing at the burial site is like a non-magical mirror. Like it's all kind of ridiculous. But the adventure itself, once again, says, oh, these people were sent here by Calorel to look for this mirror that plays no role whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the players would have no way of ever figuring this out. So I wouldn't even bother to try to make it linked at all. Just make them tomb robbers or bandits or something like that. There's nothing to be gained by having...
Yeah, it's like a non-encounter almost. It's like there was room for a little bit of role play in it, where or deceit, but the NPCs are going to attack you regardless of what happens.
Yeah.
So.
No, there's no need for it to be there. So if I was going to use it, I'd probably try to use it as a setup to either expand my world building or set up a hook for maybe a future adventure. Right, like maybe these are a rival group of archaeologists,
Yeah, or just move them to the actual keep itself that they're excavating that's been ruined.
Yeah, you could do that too. Yeah.
You could put it somewhere where there's a reason for it being there, because there's not much reason for them to go out of their way to come back, except for the reason that the adventure wants you to leave town and come back to town.
Yes, for reasons. Yeah, I mean, and you could easily have the person in the keep itself.
Yeah.
Right? He's just captured in the keep. So you could cut it completely. But yes, they have to leave and then come back because that sets adventure triggers off. Because the sage doesn't tell you anything unless you leave and do something. So you got to kill the kobolds.
Yeah.
To find out more information.
Build trust, I guess. I don't know.
And I mean, it comes down to is like that's actually kind of why maybe you keep the burial site in there, because if you use my suggested hook where like you're actually helping this guy out, you're looking for his friend.
Yeah.
Returning with his friend would definitely earn you some brownie points, more so than just like, hey, you killed kobolds. Because just because you went out and murdered some things doesn't mean you're a good person.
Yeah, bad people murder.
Yes. Right? Like, it doesn't say anything about your alignment whatsoever.
It's also just like they expect you to level up during this adventure too. So it's like these things are here just to give you experience.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think they add much. Though when you come back, apparently there's supposed to be more of a sense of foreboding. Like there's a heavy sense over the town. So I guess you're supposed to use it as like foreshadowing that something bad is happening somewhere. But then again, like if you use the adventure as written, you just read explicitly
what's going on,
what's going to happen, right? So like
it sounds like, we don't know what's going on. You're like, well, I got this note.
this note from somebody who says that everything bad is going to happen, right? So yeah,
we figured this out in like 4 hours. You guys haven't figured it out yet?
Yeah, I also like it just as a personal thing in the adventure. It says that like when they leave the town again, they get like cheered as the heroes.
Yeah, the heroes.
I'm like, come on, man!
Isn't that after the undead part?
No, it's not. I wrote it down. Right, like I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
They have a pretty low threshold for heroes.
Well, they're like super bored too. They're in the middle of nowhere. These adventures roll through. Whatever. They're making you feel heroic, I guess.
I guess to keep up the good work, people. Anyway, so regardless of what you did beforehand, presumably at some point you're going to end up at this keep. It's not super far from the town. I didn't work out the math on distance, but
it's close.
Like an hour maybe by foot. It's like right next to it, and it's broken up into several levels.
Two levels.
Well, two levels and then sort of like sub things.
Yeah.
Two main levels. So let's talk about, I guess, the first level before we get deeper. Is there anything in particular? I mean, I have a bunch of comments, but...
No, not really. I thought the lore of like why this is a ruined place was great. Like the corrupted paladin that went on the killing spree. Mm-hmm. I thought that was excellent. I
also, as part of that though, is like, lore is cool when your players can find out about it.
Yeah.
And they can.
Yeah, they can. Yeah.
Because they meet the
paladin.
They meet him as a ghost.
Which there's some interesting choices that they can make later that can either benefit them or not help them at all. So
they can convince him to like help them.
Yeah. And
get a sword, like actually a pretty cool magic sword.
Yeah.
Or they can fight him and kill him, and they don't get the sword.
I also liked like Sir Keegan.
Yeah, Sir Keegan. Yeah.
It's not just talk to him and win. Like it's on a succeed fail basis. So if you, and I mean they do give you like the interaction is they say is supposed to be with every party member in your thing. So he's asking specific questions to each of the party member, and whether or not you succeed on these checks versus what he's asking you need 4 successes or 4 fails. So you don't automatically win this encounter, I guess, to get the magic sword.
Well, I mean that's pretty indicative of a lot of the 4th edition skill challenges. It was usually a success versus failure thing, which some people like, some people don't like. I think it can work if it's built around like your players actually trying to do things versus them just sitting there and being like roll, hey, we won, right? Like it should be as part of the actual thing. But yes, it's not just a one person rolls yes or no. It's built as like a general encounter, and it's well laid out, and there's responses and whatnot. But the players have to convince this person that they're not murder
They're
hobos.
the help. Yeah, I mean, with all the encounters throughout the adventure, maybe this is like specific to 4, is that there's like combat related tactics explained. So you're supposed to run these encounters in a certain way. Like in the torture room where they'll try and push you into the Iron Maiden. I thought that was good. Where they'll try and lure you into a cage to follow you. I liked all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's a very 4th edition thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Always a big fan of when you get a chance to have a goblin as a friend.
Yeah,
Like...
what was his name? I wrote
Splug.
Splurg. Splurg the Goblin Prisoner. I like that a lot.
I'm always a fan of when you can have a goblin on your side.
I like that he's a con artist too.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's gonna steal from you if he can. Like he's totally untrustworthy. The only thing that works in his favor is he dislikes the other goblins more.
Yeah, it's like that's like the good reason.
I mean, and I did like too that the adventure basically says like you can do whatever you want with this, right? So you could basically get a goblin cohort for the rest of the adventure.
Forever.
Probably not.
Just be your buddy. The excavation site room I like just because it has environmental hazards.
I totally think it would make for a cool encounter. I think it's completely dumb.
Lots of these like rooms are stupid. They're just rooms that like this is like it's just a typical dungeon crawl. Like there's just rooms here for being rooms because you're in a keep, so it's big. Like most of this just be abandoned. Like there shouldn't be almost anything. You just wander through and it just be like an eerie
mostly
abandoned
empty.
place.
Yeah.
But like there's stuff everywhere. So
but I mean, like, why are they digging out the foundation? Like the whole thing is like goblins are supposed to be lazy. Why are they digging out foundation stones in this random room?
I mean, it does say they're like mostly sitting around. Like they might have been working on this for like a year.
That's true. I will say that in general, from the entire adventure, like one of my personal dislikes about D&D in general is large dungeons.
Yeah, room to room stuff is
it's boring, but it also like it's especially when you contrast this to the Kobold Cave, where like you're noisy, a bunch come. That doesn't happen in here. There's way more kobolds. There's way more goblins. There's way more stuff. Like combat's loud. Like if I was being attacked, the first thing I would yell is like, I'm being attacked, help, and then everybody comes, right?
Also, you're expected to clear the first level of the keep, go back to town, and come back and do the second level.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's whatever. Other rooms, Chieftains Lair was just like a whatever encounter. You just fight.
I mean, I will say in terms of what you just mentioned there about leaving, the keep is set up in a way that I could reasonably believe that like the people on the second floor don't care about the people on the first floor and might not leave in that time frame. So at least I would say it's reasonably plausible, but not particularly likely. One thing I'm going to point out here, pit trap, all about the pit traps.
Yeah.
So yeah, apparently the goblins pried out foundation stones from a castle and then dug a 20-foot pit because they like mindless menial labor. Like, come on. Like, there's like a million easier types of traps to make.
Yeah.
But excavation, I mean, D&D loves their pit traps.
Yeah.
But they give you featherfall at first level. So it's a personal issue. I think pit traps are overused and never really come to anything.
The last room, I thought the Crypt of Shadows was kind of cool with the terror ruins. There's like that room with the zombies that you could step on the ruins that would scream. And
yes, the terror ruins, using the sound that would lure the zombies towards you. Yes, I thought that was super cool.
I also like how the zombies were supposed to behave and that they wouldn't just attack you. They wanted to just grab you and hold you. So there's like this fear of being restrained.
I like that there was the secret doors that you could assassinate the goblin boss because he was sleeping in his room.
Yep.
So you could sneak in there and like kill him. I mean, you still have to clear everything else. So there's not really like a huge benefit to doing, but like it was kind of neat.
Yep. It's another option.
Also, I did like that there was the secret treasury or weapons room. I can't remember secret armory. And there's the illusionary wall, right? And you can't, and they actually provided you with a hint to find it. Because there's the zombies behind it. The zombies are moaning. So you end up in this room and you can hear like moaning coming from behind a wall because it's an illusionary wall. So I thought that was kind of a neat touch. And then there's a riddle thing in there to get some potential for treasure. Which riddles are kind of hit or miss. It completely depends on your party whether they're any good at dealing with them. Because I mean, riddles are one of those things that can be like super frustrating. Like if you can't get it now,
because you know there's something there.
Because exactly, you know that there's something there. You get it wrong, and then it ties into like player knowledge versus character knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. Like, is your intelligence 7 barbarian whose player like knows the answer should he be able to say me no and then like do it, or just simply like you have a wizard with an intelligence of 18, can't they just roll to know?
Right.
Like, and if they can just roll to know, because your player, your character can be smarter than you.
Yeah.
Right, they know magic, so presumably they are. I don't know magic, so I assume my characters are smarter than me. So that ties in there too a little bit. So I kind of find riddles to be kind of
that's true. Yeah.
Right. Puzzles can be more fun because puzzles, you can kind of figure them out.
Right.
But with the riddle, it's a word game and it's a play on word game, and riddles tend to be language games too.
Yeah.
So it doesn't translate as well, especially if English isn't your first language. I don't really recommend them as a default in adventures, and that's just a me thing. Like there's better ways to do this, right? I mean, all you have to do is make like a ward stone or something they can find, which will open things up later. I mean, even just a key that you have to find to unlock something is more. Yeah. It's less sort of thematically cool, but more
gives them access.
Yeah, it's less punishing because you get it wrong, like everything like crumbles to rust and dust, and that's super depressing. So
I think a good way they like get around that problem without getting rid of the riddle, because I think if like you do figure out the riddle, that's cool. So I don't know, like have an unset gem. That they can find a gem to later on down so you're not just giving them the key to figure it out right away, and you're not eliminating something that could be like cool and rewarding.
Well, or you have to have hints. Like I did a little adventure for my son actually, and this is obviously simplistic because he's a kid, but the way I set up is there was a riddle. There was a locked door with a riddle, and he found a bunch of keys, and the keys had different shaped handles. So he had the hints in the shapes of the handles to help answer the riddle.
Right.
So it's helped to figure it out. It wasn't just like, here's a riddle, you know it or you don't. It's like, here's a riddle, here's a bunch of clues.
Try and figure it out.
Try to figure it out. So it makes there's ways of making riddles less punishing, I guess, which was fine. Also, this room is obviously intended to be a place where the players can rest in the middle of the dungeon, because it's like behind a secret door and an illusionary wall, so they shouldn't be found, which it's just, once again, this is totally a personal thing. It's like, I don't think you should be resting in the middle of a giant dungeon, right? Like, especially like you've half cleared this out and then you rest and then you come back like all the goblins are still just hanging out, like, I'm still bored and not doing anything. It's like, no,
they would have found you eventually.
Well, they haven't found the room yet, right? They had enough time to like dig out the basement, which you suggested might have been a year, right? Like, yet they haven't found this particular secret door, right? So yeah, I don't really like it. I find those types of things problematic for just me reasons. And if the players find it, doesn't it kind of like encourage them to just like go out
touching everything?
Well, they'll just like zap, go into one room, kill everything, go back and rest, right? It gets back into the like one encounter day thing, because it's like, hey, we're safe here, right?
It's
like,
true. Yeah.
It can be problematic for that. Also, I didn't really like, there's that cave portion, right? Like the keep abuts a natural cave, right? And then there's some random cave fauna monsters in there.
Yeah, whatever.
They're the whatever they are, the bug things, and then there's like
there's a bug room. All negligible stuff to me. It's just stuff.
Yeah, I mean, personally, like, I would probably just cut it completely. Yeah. I don't think it adds anything to it. Now, that being said, there is foreshadowing for the linked adventure, right? This is Keep on the Shadowfell is what, H1, and then there's H2, and there's a letter, because, of course, notes and letters, that's how we convey
also
plot.
Like, the space is huge. Like, unless you theater of mind what's actually going on and have like sheets to pull out when they go into a room, it's like a lot of drawing on a tabletop. Or
you print out the maps. That's what comes with all the maps.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, do you have the whole keep drawn and like reveal things as they go.
Depends how big your table is, I guess.
Yeah, but so exactly like, or do you print out the individual sheets and be like, okay, on your right there's a door, and on your left there's a door, and they're like, okay, we go through them on your right, and you're like, plop, here you go.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's more exciting. It's just a lot of drawing if you do tabletop maps for everything.
I personally don't think there's anything to be gained from including the KV part of it. It's encounters for it's experience padding, so they reach level 2 or whatever before they get to the next level, which I don't like. I don't like padding.
There's lots of just like different stuff. Like I've noticed that's like a lot of adventures have that. It's just like we need one of everything.
They got to be cool. You got to have all these cool monsters.
Like what do you like? Why do you need moss creatures and insects in a keep? Like it's presumably overrun by undead. Wouldn't that scare off other things too?
No, but I mean, you gotta have goblins, you gotta have undead. I mean, I'm surprised there's not a dragon in this one too, right? Like, Wizard of the Coast products tend to like try to be showcases of look at all the cool things
especially
you could
in these,
encounter.
Like, especially in the free to play one-offs. They definitely do have a little bit of everything.
They're trying to get you hooked, which is fine, but if you're already hooked, right?
But even if like you haven't played D&D, like does it matter if you have like an insect creature? Like what is there an insect-based campaign? Like are your players gonna have all of a sudden this vendetta against bugs that they need to go eradicate?
No.
So like why those? Why not have something more interesting or a different hook to something else?
Something iconic. I don't know. I mean, they always like to make new monsters, right? I mean, it's like, I don't know, I can think of a bunch of examples of just like random one-off monsters. You're just like, I've never heard of this monster before, but it's supposed to be super important and iconic.
Like the non-beholders.
Yeah. I mean, it could be better. I mean, it feels like filler. And whenever I see a filler in an adventure, I kind of am inclined to cut it, right? I don't think it's fun to have filler encounters. That's just me,
doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff.
Especially when this is like a giant...
There's lots more for them to do.
Yeah, it's a big adventure, right? Like it's a big level of the keep, so I guess it's there to expend resources and get experience points. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'm not a big fan of that. I'd probably just cut it. There's easier ways to increase the to put in the hook if you wanted to follow this up with H2 with Thunderspire.
So once they do finish in keep level 1, they're meant to go back to town.
Well,
they have to go back to town.
They don't have to go back to town.
They can't get to the second level of the keep without going back to town.
Yeah, they can.
Isn't there a locked door that they need to give a key passphrase to get through?
No, there's I don't know if it's a locked door. I can't remember. But there's the passphrase, but I don't know that they need the passphrase to get through it. They don't get the passphrase from going back to town. They get the false passphrase from going back to town.
They have to interrogate him. So anyway, if you go back to town, you're not even allowed back into town.
Yeah.
Because there is a graveyard ambush thing that you show up to town, they tell you that they're not opening the gate. You can convince them to open the gate for you, but there's been like a rising of undead in the graveyard next to town, which you're supposed to go clear, which you don't have to go clear.
Which you don't even have to come back to town. Anyways, if you go back to the graveyard, it's zombies, and then the spy, which is mentioned in that letter that you can find on Irontooth, has raised a bunch of dead, and turns out this is the only NPC in town who was a jerk to you. So it's a huge surprise that they turn out to be
a bad guy.
And I think they're a ranger or something like that. So they just pew you with arrows, and then the zombies are there to act as a gauntlet to keep you away from her. It's a pretty fine encounter. I think it's well set up in terms of like making you as a player hate ranged bad guys.
Yep.
But anyways, as with all encounters, you're expected to kill this character, bad guy, whatever. And once again, she has a letter which has other kind of pointless information on it. I didn't actually write it down because it wasn't as ridiculous as the last one.
Take the blood of some stuff in this vial and pour it on the sigil. And
it gives the ritual to raise the dead. That's why she could. But it also has like the passphrase to the level 2 keep, but like it's a false passphrase. So if you go and give this passphrase that you got from the note, I think it's hobgoblins attack you.
But they also shout out, "So and so is dead."
yes, exactly.
We've been thwarted.
So once again, it's a totally pointless encounter, right? Like, because you could basically seal the rift before you even come across this.
Yeah, I guess you don't have to go there.
So if you don't go back to town, why have this? I mean, the whole point is like, you need to stop these characters. They've become a thorn in my side type of idea. But depending on how quickly things occurred, why would they even know it's right?
Yeah.
And like, as we'll see, there's way more powerful creatures that this guy has hanging out with. Like, why wouldn't you send like vampires after him? Like if you're gonna kill somebody, like, you just kill them. Don't mess around.
Yep.
Like, I don't know.
It's
half measures, man.
Yeah,
it's half measures.
If you do it, you go back to the keep eventually.
Well, you go back to the second floor.
Yeah, you go to the second floor.
There's a bunch of hobgoblin encounters, which I thought were fine.
Yeah.
And they're, once again, like, these encounters change based off of whether they know you're there or not. It's not a big chain pull, but they're like, if this, they will go here, they'll do this if they're aware that there's fights.
Yeah.
Once again, they should all just mob you and kill you.
Yeah, there's nothing in the second floor that really stood out aside from being like, this is another dungeon crawl.
There's a gelatinous cube, though.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Come on, it's iconic monster time. I kind of actually like that encounter.
The way that they designed it is cool, in that it's like a closing walls encounter where you're kind of on like a timer to get out of the room.
Well, the gelatinous cube basically herds you towards undead monsters.
Yeah.
Like, it's a kind of a really neat. It's almost like a trap.
Yeah.
And I thought the encounter it set up itself was pretty cool and fun.
Yeah.
That would be memorable to me as a player.
We're in the trash compactor.
Yeah, it's effectively it. Right? Like, you're getting chased by this giant gelatinous cube on one end, and then there's scary, zombie-like things on the other end. So it's a challenging encounter, and I thought that was kind of fun. There's also basically a death trap room. The one that fills up with water, and then there's the big whirlpool in the middle. And you can die fairly easily unless you start smashing statues. Excuse me.
Yeah, like there's cool stuff to do in the second floor. There's nothing that's like, it's just there to be cool. Yeah. It doesn't progress the plot. It's just stuff in the way of getting to the final place, which is like the real cool stuff. But otherwise, it's like, nah, they're gonna succeed.
Well, I actually think the death trap could actually be a death trap. Right?
Yeah.
I think it's legitimately possible for your characters to TPK in that room, right? Like, it's not inherent. It's not inherently obvious what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
To disable the trap, which is actually kind of funny considering how telegraphed so much of this stuff has been. In that, like, oh, you do this and then you do this, and like, oh, Orcus, save me, like that type of stuff that is in it, and then you have this murder room where
all of a sudden D&D's hard.
All of a sudden D&D's hard, right? Like, you don't have to make any, like, it's not tricky, and it's definitely a trap that can be solved by like smashing things, which is kind of the default go-to response for a lot of traps. But the damage ramps up pretty quickly. Yeah. And with some big rolls from the DM, you could have your players in trouble fairly quickly.
Well, it's like in the last encounter too. There's some mechanics in there that it's just like,
it's awesome.
Like, I was thinking about the people that I run games for, and I'm just like, if they were in this situation, one or more of them is permanently dead. Yeah. Like, there's almost no way, because I would have it that the rift would be open. Like, and to close it, they need to kill the person who opened it, right? Like, they don't. Like,
sure.
Like, because.
Well, I mean, how do you have the thing from the rift if the rift?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it needs to be open or partially open.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just extreme this encounter.
So I guess the next part after clearing level 2 is going to the Cathedral of Shadow.
Which is cool. It's like blood everywhere and it's dripping down below.
But this is like where the final fight takes place, is in this area.
Yeah, this area. Like, but it's like the temple. Like, so there's the temple and then there's like the rift below. So there's two fights basically. There's the Cathedral fight. Let me just double check here. Yeah, the Cathedral of Shadow. This is where you fight the acolyte I wrote it down somewhere. Acolyte of Orcus. So there's a wizard, and this is where the vampire spawn are. So you got to fight this fight before you actually fight Calorel.
Are they not all in the same room?
I hope not. Are they?
I thought they were, because don't they move to defend him and move into the circle?
Maybe. I thought it was two different things.
I'm pretty sure it was all in one thing. Okay, so that's how I have my notes.
Oh, well, maybe I misread it.
Which is
totally possible. This fight becomes a lot harder if they're all there. But I will say that, like, how do you have vampire spawn without vampires, right? Like, that's just a me thing. I was just like, really? I mean, yeah, vampire.
Yeah, it's like also another half measure. It's like
it's the it comes into one of my final thoughts on the matter, where it's just like, it's a monster buffet. Like, you can have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You need undead monsters.
Yeah.
There's scary undead monsters. I get it, but I don't know. Maybe just use something else. But vampires have cool abilities, which makes it more challenging for the players. So
yeah.
But
I'm certain this all happens in the same room.
I'm not,
because I remember reading it and being like, oh, after all of these like minion heavy challenging encounters that they go through, that just like the player characters automatically win based on action economy in this fight. Until I started to see all the environmental stuff that's in this room, which I was like, oh, now you can actually play this tactically smart to give you huge advantage.
I might have misread it. It doesn't really matter because it's all basically my notes have it all together.
The blood on the floor I thought was great. That if you try to move, you have to succeed on like an athletics if you're trying to run anywhere.
Oh yeah, and if you fall in it, you take a ton of damage.
Yeah, so it's like thought that was great.
The thing from basically there's this giant portal on the one side, and there's this thing
from beyond or whatever.
Yeah, and it basically it's tentacles that come and reach out of the pit, and they defend Calorel while he's doing the ritual. So anybody that tries to get close to Calorel to try to stop it can be grappled. If they get pulled into the rift,
dead.
Dead.
Yeah, anything that enters the rift, instant death.
Yeah.
Which I'm just like, I don't see how someone doesn't end up getting pulled in there, or like something. Like have the other NPCs try and push them towards this thing, like herd them towards it. Like,
well, I mean, Calorel has like abilities that heal the undead, so everyone's going to cluster around him, which means any melee characters are going to.
And it explicitly states that like he will not leave within a certain distance.
Oh yeah, he's not dumb.
Like, yeah.
So unless your party is a bunch of archers, like all just like ranged people that can stay out of it, it's going to be super tough, like super duper tough.
Yeah, and there's a huge like ruin on the center of the floor that if the NPCs go inside of it, they get buffed as well.
Yeah.
So they get extra AC. There's not. It's hard. I think this is difficult. Like to win this encounter and actually stop everything without people dying. Is almost next to impossible.
Well, I think that, and unfortunately, I think that this has the assumption that the players will rest before they fight the boss fight.
Right.
Which is, once again, that ties into stuff we've talked about previously about that being sort of problematic.
It doesn't ever say that, like, the rift is closed. Or, like,
Well, no, it doesn't close. That's the whole thing.
It stays open because if you kill the Calorel, right, that it pulls him in there. So.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. Like, it sucks. Like, but I don't know. What would you do? Would you keep, like, would the thing stay there to be a threat? Like, would it just stay in the wall? Or, because it says it lives inside of the portal, right? So, like, would it actively continue to try and pull people in?
I'd say yes.
See, I would leave a portal there and just, like...
Well, I mean, I think, and that sort of ties into sort of wrapping things up here, is, like, I actually think that this should be the focus going on. And I haven't read the H2, so maybe it talks about it more in that. But I actually think that this could be a kickoff point to a larger campaign, in that you now have this thing.
Well, you have access to the Shadowfell.
Well, you have potentially access to the Shadowfell. What, to a temple to Orcus in the Shadowfell, which isn't necessarily someplace you want, but like you can make the rest of your campaign how to actually destroy it, or reseal it, or just defend it, and then they have a keep, and maybe they rebuild the keep, and then once again, like the 5th edition especially gives you a ton of money. What are you going to spend it on? Rebuild this keep. Then you could have maybe an army coming in, an army of Orcus trying to get reacts. Like more cultists come. Like it could be. You're trying to, like, you could have an epic situation where there's basically an army besieging the outside of the castle while you are trying to complete a ritual to finally end it. Like you could have your whole campaign that starts and finishes with the mirror opposite, which would be awesome.
Or maybe you want to finish his work.
Yeah, or exactly. Maybe one of your clerics is like,
hey
oh
guys,
man, this Orcus thing seems like it'd be pretty sweet.
I mean, it corrupted a paladin.
Yeah,
and that's when it was closed.
Oh, whispers through the open portal.
Exactly.
Maybe it's the thing, the rift thing in the rift talks.
Well, exactly. So it was able to corrupt like a high level paladin. Presumably, it could corrupt members in your party.
Imagine if it can send out little thin tendrils through the keep and like burrow into your ear.
Maybe that's what happened in the keep already.
And then like you could see, you could have encounters where like you see like a tentacle or things in the corner and stuff like that. Like you could really
visions of being very powerful. The lure of the overarching lure of Orcus's
Well, it's
power.
Orcus, right? Like it's the lure of immortality, right? He's a god of death, right? So I think that it definitely sets you up to do some super cool stuff afterwards.
Yep.
Right? Like it definitely lays a good foundation for really fun stuff.
Yep. Definitely.
But to sort of reiterate what I started at the beginning is I do think Calorel needs to be introduced somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. Like
an early adventure, a one shot.
Early adventure, something that happens at some point. Yeah. Maybe even just like in the back story. Mm-hmm. You know, he killed your father. No, I am your father. You know, like it's some sort of reason to have some sort of emotional connection with it, because even in the adventure it's like, this is the first time your players have encountered him. Really ham him up, like play him up as arrogant, and blah 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 blah, make him hate it. And I think one of the reasons why they say this is because when Calorel dies, he gets dragged into the Shadowfell, and it explicitly says in the adventure,
bring him back.
You can bring him back.
Yeah.
Like he could be the one as a lich that's leading the armies to besiege, later on.
So a very cool start of a campaign if you wanted to create something around it.
It's pretty by the numbers initially, but the ending is super neat. And
which seems to be, that's like the other adventures we've done too. It's like pretty standard with a great finish.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to Death House is a fun one.
Yeah.
That's a great ending to that. But no, I really liked how it ended. This is one of those adventures where like it ends and you're just like, it gave me tons of ideas that I'm like, oh, it'd be so cool because we could do this or we could do that or the players could do that. Like it's one of those adventures where you finish it and it's not like, oh, it's over. It's like, oh, it's just beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is exciting about it. So if nothing else, that's why it's a great adventure to start things off with, or even like if an early adventure is your second adventure, because it leaves you at this great branching off point. Mm-hmm. And granted, your players can just be like, all right, we're done, we're leaving, not our problem, which leaves you with the opportunity is later on, make it their problem again, because they
left a rift open to the Shadowfell.
Exactly. Now Calorel's come back through the rift and he's, done all this stuff. So I think it leaves you with a lot of really fun options for an ongoing campaign, and even just as a one and done type of adventure, I think it's satisfying on that level.
Agreed.
As well. But yeah, I liked it. I would recommend it.
Yeah, I'd run it. I'd change some things, but
nothing's perfect, right?
Yep.
I'm super nitpicky about this type of stuff, but overall, it's pretty enjoyable. Anyways, I don't have anything else to say. Do you have any other points regarding Keep on the Shadowfell?
No, I just think I like the overarching theme of kind of doom throughout the whole thing. But otherwise, it's good. Yeah,
actually, I think just sort of speaking to what you just said there, you could probably put more foreshadowing in it.
Yeah.
Right? Like blood moons, or like, wake up and all the birds are dead, or there's a bunch of crows in a tree just watching you all the time.
Something to add, like, now that you're saying that, is like, it does say in the adventure when you get to the keep to add, like, make sure that you describe that there's no animal sounds, that, the air has gotten cooler, that there's no wind. Like, it does explicitly say to, like, try and make an ominous feeling. So, like, the birds watch you when you're going to the keep. Like, you could add those things along the way to make this even like, whoa, like who is Orcus? What are we doing
extra
here?
Spookiness.
Yeah.
You could even have things where, like, ghosts, because of the increased death stuff. Like, you just have, like,
well, it does say to add footsteps into the, like, say that you hear footsteps when you're moving through the keep and all sorts of stuff. So
or even just in town, right? Especially if players are being kind of lazy about it, you could definitely have sort of like the unquiet dead aspect of it and play that up a little bit more. Like, you see a ghost or whatever. Like, I think you could definitely
nightmares.
Nightmares are a classic trope that you should definitely take advantage of. I don't know. I think it's a really solid adventure that gives you a lot of room to build off of it and add a lot of personal flavor.
Lots
to
of
it.
wiggle room.
I think that's enough. I think we've talked about enough there. As always, thanks for listening. If you have any suggestions for any adventures you'd like us to check out in the future, like, there's a ton of them out there, and
too many.
And we're kind of cherry picking ones that sound interesting to us and what have you. But if you have any great gems out there that we might not be aware of, please let us know. And